Okay. I don't care. In no matter what he says about me, my community, or my mods, I still firmly believe, okay? I still firmly believe that regardless of everything else, regardless of how he's responded to people yelling at him online, let's do this. Why the H3 Leftovers podcast will never return by North Star Radio.
In 2021, Hassan Piker.
That's very patronizing. Yeah, I am being patronizing. I don't know who the
Hold on.
you are, and you're over here chirping all the way from London about Palestine.
The biggest political Twitch streamer on the platform was blowing up in popularity, thanks in large part to his coverage of the 2020 presidential election following his controversial departure from the Young Turks.
America deserved 9/11, dude. I'm saying it.
At the same time, Ethan Klein.
Yay! What? What? National.
And this is why the Leftovers podcast will never return.
I think it's kind of funny to see like an effort post from a leftist about like a podcast that I was a part of. You know what I mean? I rarely ever have Hassan Abihez that make like effort posts in general. He did it like a true crime video. It feels weird. They said they were
Today's
ashamed.
broadcast is brought to you by viewers like you. Become a member today and unlock exclusive content at patreon.com/NorthstarRadio. Going back all the way to the beginning of the H3 podcast, politics was always being discussed.
He called you and Ethan terminally online. I mean, he's not wrong. Also, I think North Star is a really interesting subject because he's a great content creator in and of himself, like as a standalone content creator. But I find it really funny. That I think he like became a fan of mine because he watched me on watched me talk to Ethan the first time Ethan ever had me on his podcast before Leftovers. Dude, absolutely wild. You're about to talk about Ethan and Leftovers right now. I feel like you never mentioned him, or since it ended, I'm kind of in disbelief right now. The reason why I choose not to talk about like Ethan or Leftovers or anything like that is because I think it instills a lot of parasocial emotions in a lot of people. And that level of like parasocial behavior ends up being unproductive because there's no, like, people literally bring up Ethan when I'm talking about Israel Palestine, when in my assessment it's like he is not even meeting the standard of like content creator who is across the board, a content creator who's like across the board against most of the things I believe in. Okay, that's it. And I personally don't even care if he's like calling me out or whatever. I heard that like people were saying that Ethan talked about me on his podcast today or something like that. I don't care. I genuinely don't care. For me, you know what I do care about? Ethan considering what Israel's doing to be genocidal far before October 7th. Okay? I do care about that. I think that matters, especially when he is so close to the subject matter, so close to the different aspects of social conditioning that play a pretty prominent role in the development of American Jews, who are very progressive people overall. Okay? I don't care. In no matter what he says about me, my community, or my mods, I still firmly believe, okay? I still firmly believe that regardless of everything else, regardless of how he's responded to people yelling at him online, regardless of all of that, I place a lot more emphasis and a lot more value on those things that he has said. Because when people say like, oh, he's being Islamophobic. Yes, there are definitely instances where he said things that are Islamophobic. Okay, both in the past and even recently. I think you guys forget that I myself am also Muslim. So when he does that, it's not like a dehumanization that doesn't feature me at all. It does. It does. But like I said, time and time again, it ultimately doesn't change this dynamic. It ultimately doesn't change my understanding of the situation. He's also going after Frogan, though, right now. Just don't get upset when H3 Dorks brigade this channel after reacting to this. Well, what's really interesting about that is that I think his community is probably more pro-Palestine than even he might be. Like, he is, yeah, I think there's probably other people from different communities that have presented themselves as like lifelong fans of Ethan. But I think he has a very large audience of very progressive young people. Okay. And as a person with a massive audience of very progressive young people, there are probably a lot of people who are more, I would say, more in favor of, not to say like he's more pro-Palestine than he is. I don't know how to communicate this. Like, I think his audience probably is more at odds with him on this issue than he suspects. Like, there's definitely a big audience overlap, but even beyond that, like, I think that there are probably more in his community, overall than I mean, I don't even think that than he thinks. Like, I think that a lot of it was attributed to me, but I think that's just what happens when you have a very progressive community overall. I suspect that given that that he is a content creator who's been around for a very long time, there are probably old fans who fell out of favor, then came back into the community that are presenting themselves as like diehard H3 heads in an effort to probably say like, no, we're with you. It's great. Keep doing what you're doing. That's it. It's always been about trying to manage like the outside forces that were desperately trying to work in an effort to separate both me and Ethan. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. There was a disagreement for sure, you know?
Jordan Peterson came on the podcast 2 times in the early days of his rise to fame.
If you guys know who Jordan Peterson is, he's like a psychologist or something, but he's
a scholar.
He's a scholar.
He's a really smart guy.
It's a very strange story in many ways because Hitler was obsessed with order and cleanliness. He was a very orderly person. He was very sensitive to disgust, you know, because you think, well, the Nazis were afraid of the Jews.
This entire drama fest started because Destiny viewers tried to pit your viewers and Ethan and his viewers against each other. It worked. They continue to do this every day. And this chat constantly follows the debate. Yeah, exactly. And it is also because there is a real, genuine parasocial desire from people who consume a lot of this content, whether it be just Ethan or myself or both, to like constantly cover a issue of real geopolitical significance, an issue of genocide, but from this incredibly narrow framing of like, what does this content creator think about this other content creator? As I always say, drama makes boring subject matter incredibly consumable. Okay. And that's precisely the reason why people like randomly will bring up Ethan, which I think is like not only unproductive, but stupidest. Like, I don't give a, you know? Anyway, Ethan's so woke on certain issues that he did things that I wouldn't have done, like deleting the Jordan Peterson videos, unless he like felt embarrassed by it, which is a, you know, different thing. But, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's silly.
You know, because they were other, and that's not right. What's more accurate is that, especially Hitler, he was very sensitive to disgust. That's what it looks like. If you're disgusted by something, then you want to eradicate it. Right? If you're afraid of something, you want to run away.
If you're gonna make a why left the left video and do a right wing, mark my words. No, you're wrong. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. You're crazy. No way, dude. No way. Like, I would believe that for a lot of other people, but I would not believe that for Ethan. No, especially because, no, you see, this is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about. You guys are lasering in on one issue and not thinking about like the person, okay? Not thinking about the person, not thinking about all their other perspectives, all their other opinions. He's currently hanging out weekly with the Nelk Boys. Again, you're looking at like, no, he's making friends with MAGA freaks. It's, so what? So what? He's always had a ton of like right-wing freaks and whatnot in his orbit. Okay, bro, he's using the term tanky. Come on, it's all there. No, it just shows that he's extremely online. You're doing it already. You're doing it. Just watch the video.
Away from it. If you're disgusted by it, you want to burn it to the damn ground. You want to get rid of it.
Came on the podcast 2 times in the early days of his rise to fame. And in the post-Trisha Paytas timeline of the H3 podcast, political discussion shifted drastically to a more supportive, inclusive understanding of the ever-changing world.
I like both you and Ethan. It's tough to watch. See, this is also the other thing that I didn't want, which was like chatters coming in here to like spark drama. There are certain things that I will not abide by. If you come in here and say, I wish you control your audience more against the, is completely unacceptable. You're being disrespectful to me and you're being disrespectful to the thousands of Jewish members in this community that are prominent members of this community for many, many years is completely abhorrent and completely unacceptable. And there's never been a moment where I've ever allowed. That's it. That's my red line. Okay. I'm very open-minded and I'm very nice. But if you come in here and you ever chirp and claim that there is that I'm allowing in this community, you're wrong. Okay. That's it. Like, I think you are trying to bait in this situation. Like, you might be a former fan, but this is completely ridiculous. Okay? It's ridiculous.
World around us.
This guy is the peace and love guy.
There's no such thing as trans people. That's something that you created. So have fun with your little dreamland. But that's just not.
By the way, this is why I also say, like, Ethan is not going to become a right winger or whatever. Look at him. He's like on Nick Merckx for his like obvious anti-trans takes. Like, he's pro-trans.
Real.
Take it from me, a dude who's never known a gay person.
Dude. Vagina. Girl. Done.
Slam dunk.
Come in here with that trans.
We got him again. Slam dunk. Vagina. Boom. Boom.
But it wasn't until one fateful day when Ethan Klein and the H3 podcast decided to dive into the deep end of the online sphere of political commentary. That day was the beginning of the end for Steven Crowder.
Oh, there he is. Oh no, Sam Cedar. What a nightmare.
But before this was released on the H3 podcast channel, 10 months after Hassan Piker made his first appearance on the H3 podcast, Ethan Klein made his first ever appearance on the Hasanabi broadcast to promote the release of this once-in-a-lifetime debate.
Boys, girls, Ethan Klein to the H3 podcast.
Are you pretty hyped up on the Crowder?
Oh my God, I'm so hyped up, dude. I'm so excited. Are you wearing holsters right now?
Yeah, yes. We're all wearing holsters.
Now, was the debate any good? Not really. They certainly got Steven Crowder to admit to quite a bit, like running away from past debates with Sam Cedar.
I had no idea that you were taking your show off early last time, coming in today.
He admitted that he followed the show last week.
We got him.
He admitted that he watched the show last week.
We got him. Dude, we played him so hard because he literally was following. He saw that you went live, dude. We got him.
Oh my God, we nailed him.
But most of the debate was pretty anticlimactic.
I have a general
This is a
rule.
great opportunity.
I don't start a debate based with people on a lie. And how about you get
sabotaging?
How about you get
Steven,
to
show yourself, you coward. Steven, show yourself. Don't show your co-host.
Ethan, you should
Steven,
show your...
Ethan, how can you respect yourself as a man, brother?
Steven, you are such a coward. Stop showing your little leprechaun co-host who comes out dressed like your sidekick.
Come on, Ethan, why do you have to bring on a
Show
guy
Steven.
Despite the debate's disorderly nature, it sparked something in the mind of Ethan, a yearning, a craving. He had one tiny droplet of debate pervertry, and he couldn't go back.
Oh God. Do you look back on these clips with sadness or joy? Kind of reminds me of looking back at photos of friends I'm no longer associated with, and it just feels like a massive void. No, I don't. No, dude, I'm happy. Listen, instead of being sad that something ended, why not be happy that it happened to begin with? You know, that's the way I look at it. It's like the DNC. Listen, I never in a million years would ever think that I would become one of the largest content creators on any platform. Okay. As a political commentator who has opinions that are completely outside of what is considered normal and good in American political discourse, I never thought that I would get to this position. So I don't take that for granted at all. Okay. I'm very fortunate. I talk about it all the time. I probably should talk about it more frequently, to be honest. Like, I have a place that I can go to every single day. Okay. A community of like-minded individuals who don't around, who don't actually allow any kind of like serious infractions against marginalized communities at all. Like, this kind of stuff I never would have imagined it. I became a content creator in an era where there was nothing like this. Okay. You had Sam Cedar, you had the Young Turks, which is kind of funny to bring back now. You had Democracy Now, you had like Some Air America. Okay. There was nothing online. The entire online commentary field was captured in completely by right-wing commentators. Many people were either center right or just straight up Nazis. Okay. Literal Nazis. Now, some of them still exist. Some of the literal Nazis still exist, but like overall, there was a very, very, very little there was very little space for people who were like immediately hostile to this kind of sentiment, to like leftist attitudes, progressive attitudes, to social democracy even. So overall, because I remember that, and I remember how isolating that felt, and how that felt to get constant death threats and you know, doxing and a litany of other, like, you know, clip chimpers and whatnot. Like, even back then, yeah, I'm incredibly fortunate to be in this position. And so, yeah, I don't think that this is, you know, I remember this fondly, you know, because it's not something that I would have ever expected. That's also part of the reason why I place a lot of value in people who have personally had an attitude change, who like recognize the errors in the way that they were thinking or the way that they were operating as content creators in the past, who like used to move a certain way and now and have now dramatically shifted away from that. Like, that's why I hype up Ethan and hyped up Ethan quite a bit as well, because like, regardless of what he had done in the past, like, he is a person who truly changed. And I do believe it. I think that was legitimate. I think that was genuine. A lot of people try to ascribe like cynical motives to people doing things like that, where it's like, oh, he couldn't be edgy anymore, that's why he did it. Like, I don't think so. I think it was a genuine change of heart. And so, you know, if someone is capable of doing that, if someone is capable of experiencing that level of growth on their own, especially as a content creator, when they could have very easily probably continued doing exactly the type of thing they were doing, and also keep farming, you know, the right as much as they wanted to, then yeah, you know, I'm gonna think about that differently. Like, it changes the calculation a lot. Anyway, you should be calculating how you're gonna avoid the top of the hour ad break though, because it's coming right now. Here's the 3-minute ad break. Boom.
Day and night, week after week, Ethan Klein was not only debating the greatest of the great, but was winning in said debate.
No, I think it's more so for women pick violent men more than men pick violent women.
Based on what? Do you feel that sometimes you argue from emotion rather than like concrete facts? I feel this to be true. Do you feel you do that a lot or no?
I'm a woman, so sometimes, yeah.
Okay. Interesting defense.
You're done with that? Can we talk like adults now or not?
I think this...
Hey, I just got here. This video is low-key parasocial, and I apologize beforehand. Wait, is this North Star? Is North Star Comrade Casey? Oh, it is. Damn, dog. You're going to apologize for making a parasocial-ass video? That's crazy.
This conversation has kind of been exhausted.
People would rather watch me full screen cam do the worm
do
than watch
that.
your prime.
Bro,
watch your
do
prime
it for
content.
a week. Do a week of no reaction content and see how many views you get. Oh, he's crying in the corner.
No, he's not. He's not crying in the corner, Ethan. He is deploying the most powerful counter debate tactic known to man. That's right. I want you to see it for all of its glory. That is, ladies and gentlemen, The Worm. Absolute cinema peak. Okay? No one has ever so thoroughly destroyed another interlocutor in the marketplace of ideas before or after this. Okay? This caused a worldwide shift in the way that people even analyze or internalize debates.
Okay, sure.
He went up against world-class greats. People like a 20-year-old dropshipper.
I'm just trying to flex on you guys.
But why?
I'm trying to show you guys what's up.
A printer salesman.
All day when you need a printer.
A character from the Asian version of Get Out.
I identify as Korean.
A Quebecois.
A carrot.
And even a man from the Nexium cult.
I got on the bus and they made an announcement about my Tourette syndrome. And earlier in line, a lady had heard me saying some inappropriate words. And she stood up and she said, well, how come he can say this word?
Okay, that one was actually pretty well done.
Let me, I have a theory for you.
I'm ready.
Okay, cool. I think you actually fake having Tourette's. Yeah, I think you actually don't have it. Here's my thing.
Austin was wild for that day. Austin just walked in, by the way.
Let me just break it down. I think this is kind of what happened, but maybe you just called someone the N-word on the bus, and then you're like, oh, no, I have Tourette's. As somebody with Tourette's, I actually have Tourette's. I know it's not curable, so I just find that claim to be absolutely a pseudoscientific, crazy claim that has no backing in science or at all. And I think you're actually in my opinion, as someone with Tourette's, I think you're scamming people.
Did you say that you have Tourette's?
I do have Tourette's.
I didn't
Isn't
know
that crazy. Yeah, I know. That's why I was so surprised when you emailed me, because I was like, I have Tourette's. And what's interesting too, I've also talked about how much I hate Keith and NXIVM and what a psycho he is. So when I got your email, I was like, this is incredible. And I could totally see how it is you fell into a cult, because you clearly don't do any research.
Mind you, this was all taking place in the same timeline of the Leftovers podcast. They began the show on September 26, 2021, and Hassan Piker, but I'll call him Piker, seemed a bit uncomfortable at first, just getting the feel of the room and his ability to speak at will. This also wasn't a brand new podcast, rather a brand new show on an already existing podcast, so it makes sense it'd be a little challenging for Hassan Piker to just jump right in. But after only a few episodes, everything was perfect. I had already been radicalized by Hassan in 2019 and 2020, but the partnership of my two favorite creators only grew my passion for politics even more. So during this time, Ethan and Hassan are becoming best buds. They do a weekly show together. Ethan comes on the Hasanabi broadcast again. Hassan visits the H3 podcast again to help in the interview of Liver King. And during this time, Ethan is participating in debate after debate. And Hassan is watching these debates on his stream, supporting Ethan in his performance as friends do. Hassan would even text Ethan talking points during the debates.
This is from last year. It says, what the F is happening with gay people? 10 years ago, everyone called them F words, the F slur for gay people in high school. And today, 1 in 6 high schoolers claim to be gay.
1 in 6. So yeah, it's continuing. More and more people.
So do you miss the days when we could call gay people the F word?
No, I just think it's surprising. I think it's crazy that that's happened. It's been such a popular trend lately.
Yeah, but that's not true either, is it?
No, it is.
What's your data?
My cousins that are in high school. I've talked to my cousins in high school.
Is data
strangers? People liked that video and commented on it and said the same thing.
Oh, that's data. Never mind. Ethan got to bust out the left-handed. The number of people who are left-handed.
The amount of left-handed people back in the day was really low.
I sent it back.
People left-handed were seen as inferior, and they were forced to use their right hand more often. But as it became more acceptable and people realized left-handed people weren't demons, then the amount of left-handed people increased, and it became steady at what, like 10% or something?
12%.
12% is left-handed. It went up astronomically all of a sudden. Would you say people choose to be left-handed?
I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, but that'd be silly. Why would you?
You don't know anything about anything, and yet you still chirp on it. Why not chirp on this too?
But little did Hassan know, he was feeding the thing that would eat him.
I don't know if it's like that. I don't think it's like that.
He was flying too close to the debate pervertry's sun, and all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, Ethan, sitting there with a very large debate ego, turned around to face towards Hassan and said,
"Allow me to debate the master."
2 months before the abrupt ending of the Leftovers podcast, Ethan Klein was having some moral quandaries about his devotion for capitalism, where he enjoyed the freedom that came from capitalism, the ability to succeed from nothing that came from capitalism, but was disheartened by the inequality that capitalism fosters.
I know that I'm a capitalist, so I've been trying to think, like, how do you square that with my other, like, socialist ideas? Like, I think the government should have guaranteed jobs for people that want to work, that pay enough for the minimum amount needed to have shelter and food. First of all, I think it's like the natural inclination of some people. Like, I don't think it's even realistic to say, I want to live in like a perfect communistic society, because that just doesn't work. It's antithetical to human nature. But I do think there are good things of capitalism provides, which is, I do think there's a sense of innovation that happens when people are motivated by money and pushed to, do certain ideas. I don't hate the idea of like people who can be successful. I think it's good. I think that capitalism is a more realistic system of government.
It's because he's a dangist. Socialism is not about poverty. To be rich is to be glorious. Ethan Shout, he's a dangist, dude. To be rich is to be glorious.
Governance than like communism is, Communism never works because people are inherently corrupt, and whoever's in charge they're gonna be greedy, they're gonna be corrupt, they're gonna fuck everything up. It doesn't make sense. Like, it's almost like weird virtue signaling to be like, I'm living in modern day America, but I want a full communist revolution. I'll take on humanity, dude. I am a capitalist. What do you want? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I
pretty
think
much.
But the thing is, like, they think that like workers should share in the workers should get a percent of your earnings, essentially, a percentage of their production. I don't agree with that. You're watching a capitalist pig. Deal with it. You guys are all like radical communists. There's that many radical communists.
They're not radical communists. Not everybody that's anti-capitalist is a communist.
It is kind of a radical take, that being.
So this is like, I think this should be a pretty good indication of like Ethan's community, at least like those who are chatting in his chat. Because it's not like I was watching him during this, or it's not like I was streaming during the, I mean, it's not like I wasn't streaming during this. Like I was probably doing, at the same time as this was happening, I was probably streaming my own, you know what I mean? Like these are his own fans, right? Like these are, my point is there's a lot of people who don't agree with Ethan on certain issues that still enjoy his content. And that's perfectly valid, you know? Yes, you were, and people were timed out. Yeah, I'm sure. Because usually what we do is like, when people are like, Ethan's talking about socialism or whatever, right? Like, I'm sure people were probably coming here to get me to like cover it or whatever. And I was like, not really inclined to do so because I was probably doing some other. That was actually a big part. There was a lot of people back in the day that would be like cross-pollinating both streams, where they'd be like watching Ethan and then would come in here to be like, oh, Ethan's talking about this, like cover it now. And I was like, no, I don't, you know, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm like talking about the news or some other boring. Okay. Like, so the reason why I say that is because like, I think that I can't speak to what is inside of Ethan's mind beyond what he has said. And I did always get the feeling that he thought that like I was egging on his own community to like hate him. You know what I mean? And I wasn't. Not only was I not, but I was getting yelled at by my own community for not, in their assessment, adequately addressing his takes with the same passion and fervor that I would address anyone else that I don't know if they were chirping in a similar capacity. Like, people still yelled at me and continue to do so for not arguing against Ethan hard enough. Even you were far more mad at us than him at the time. Yeah, no, for sure. I was, because I thought you guys were being ridiculous. I still yell at people when people come in here to be like, Ethan said this, Ethan said that. It's like, it's for me, it does not, like, it doesn't really matter necessarily, because once someone ultimately is like, once someone ultimately is you know, 90% there, right? If there are personal hangups, or if they have like a personal association with the subject matter, and I can't like get over that hump overall on a single issue, I'm not just gonna like, I'm not gonna hold them to the same standard as some like random guy I don't know, whose opinions I'm not fully familiar with, that I don't know how they arrived at those positions. Okay. And for me, the way I see Ethan is like, the way I saw Ethan back then and the way I still see Ethan is like, I think he's a passionate guy who sometimes has a capacity to, you know, fly off the handle a little bit. That's why he's got the button, right? And that in the heated moment, he says a bunch of stuff, and he will sometimes even repeat these things, but ultimately as far as I can tell, his heart is in the right place. Like when he said you're fostering a community, yeah, I don't agree with that. Like, I think that's I mean, it's hurtful. It's completely untrue, and it sucks to hear, but it is what it is, you know?
And it's like full anti-capitalist. I mean, you're essentially advocating to change the entire strategies today on Earth. That's not radical.
Do you think democracy is a good thing, and do you think democracy is what helps prevent?
Yeah, but obviously our democracy isn't perfect either.
Right.
You know.
But you think ultimately that being a democracy, living in a society that votes and has, you know, the people agree on how we should, who should represent us and who should lead us is something like that's a better system than like say China, right? Where they have a council of elites and somebody is elected from within, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what if we ran companies that way?
On the following Wednesday episode of the H3 podcast.
That's the other side of this, is that like there are a lot of people that work there that don't necessarily agree with him either. And he, like, the very fact that he trusts everyone in his production team, especially Dan, regardless of their difference in opinion, I think it also is, you know, it's another reason why I'm 100% confident that he wouldn't do like a right heel turn. Like, y'all are crazy. Yeah.
Ethan once again brings up the capitalism discussion, stating that he's been thinking a lot about it and is looking forward.
Do you view the H3 like your Uncle Jank when he talks about, is this a similar situation? You know what? That's actually a really good analogy. Obviously, Jank is my uncle. There's an uncle-nephew bond that is unshakable, unbroken. You know what I mean? I think it was I think it was Shane. What's his name? The comedian guy, the one that does the Trump impersonation is really funny. Shane Gillis. He's like, I remember watching a bit from his podcast where he's like, "Listen, dog, I love my dad. I don't care. I don't care what people say." He's like, even if it was a Nazi, I probably still love that. I'd be like, "You're crazy, but I still love you." Which is funny. Like, I don't think it goes that far with the uncle-nephew bond, but like, what are you going to do? Not love your family? Like, that's insane. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have parted ways with their families, but it probably goes a lot beyond like political disagreements. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that I would love my uncle if he was a Nazi. I think that would be a bridge too far. But, you know, yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree with Jank on the issue of, I don't agree with Jank when he believes that like Venezuelan gangs are overtaking Aurora, Colorado apartment complexes. But like, you know, he's still my uncle. I love him. Like, that's it, you know? And with Ethan, there's a similarity to that. I mean, obviously, like, I don't think Jank is going to run around being like, Hasan has cultivated a community of it or something like that. That would be weird if he said that. But with Ethan, it's maybe less severe in terms of the familial bond. But yeah, it's a good analog. It's a good way to analyze the situation. Oh man. Did Ethan even say that, or are you just saying that he implied that? I don't know what he said. I haven't watched any of his like takes on me or anything else. People in the chat are saying he said that today, which, you know, it is what it is. What are you going to do? I mean, it's just patently false, and it's sad to hear that, but it's definitely, it hurts my feelings to hear that, because it's something that I do care about a lot. And it might be a better comparison, maybe. Yeah. But no, not really. I mean, I guess he said a small portion. No, there's no portion. Like any kind of tendency, we will laser you 100%. Like, there's just not, it's not going to happen.
To a further discussion with Hasan on the following Thursday.
Last week was the capitalism versus socialism week. But I have to tell you, I want to talk about it more tomorrow, because I've been thinking a lot about it.
Great.
I do. I mean, that's what Thursday is for, right?
That's what Hasan's there for. You can talk about it with him.
Ass grift.
The better analogy might be Anakin's experiences. When it comes to Ethan, it's clear that despite his personal ties to Zionism, his fundamental values have not changed with Anna. There's so many different things that she's turned reactionary towards that it's obvious she's flipped towards the right to some extent. Yeah. Like, I think I would look at the situation differently if I saw Ethan, like, not on the issue of Israel-Palestine, but if I saw him, like, taking like transphobic stances or something, like, then I'd be like, okay, maybe it's a little different. But I don't think he'd do that ever.
Dog moron. All right, to be clear, I'm not a capitalist. I'm a social democrat.
Okay.
I think that distinction is important, because people lose their mind when I say, like, I'm a capitalist. They just think that I'm like some fat cigar smoking boot on the worker's face, grind him into dust. You know what I mean? I'm a social democrat. Good night. But actually, I am looking forward to tomorrow because I have been thinking about it quite a bit.
Going into the discussion, Ethan had one overarching question.
What is it that social democracy can't achieve that socialism can? That's my question.
Okay. Let's talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Now, does Ethan actually want the answer to this question? Does he actually want to learn? Or does he simply already have an opinion on the subject he is willing to argue for hours? Yes. Ethan prefaces the discussion.
In the case of Ethan, it follows from being an Israeli, being propagandized, and having family living there. What happened to your uncle that he adopted positions? Dude, great question. I think he just like saw too many homeless people and his brain broke. Like literally, that's just, he saw like the homeless lady with the katana was a bridge too far for him. I think he just like, he snapped. Like he saw that and was like, nope, I'm done. Like that's, I think that's what it is. Plus he's old, like he's like 50, you know, come on. This guy keeps asking me questions, or there's like a bunch of people asking me questions about like Latin American leaders, man. I'm not going to answer that right now.
And by saying he's excited for the conversation, as he's been doing a lot of research. That research being talking to ChatGPT.
I want to better represent my position because I don't really know a lot, and I feel like I've done a lot of research in the week following.
Let the conversation
So,
begin.
What did you do? What did you read? What kind of research did you do?
I had a very in-depth conversation with ChatGPT.
Respect. Okay. That's good.
I asked it really kind of.
Well, Ben Shapiro thinks it's socialist, like ChatGPT socialist. So
Right.
like ChatGPT probably
ChatGPT
Lenin.
is so
Right.
real.
Yeah. Yeah.
ChatGPT keeps it so real. You don't even
Yeah.
know.
ChatGPT Lenin pilled you.
They focus this discussion on a few distinct questions or quandaries Ethan is having with capitalism, and he's not as willing to learn as he originally made it seem.
And the labor class
I
still
feel like that's
exists.
an assumption. I don't know that that's true.
They first discuss his overarching question. What can socialism achieve that social democracy cannot?
So let's talk about this. Now, my first question is this. Given that, in a social democracy, we can regulate things like taxes, housing, higher education, sharing jobs, and all this kind of stuff, what are the problems in social democracy that we need socialism to address?
So social democracy is still capitalist with serious, severe market regulations, right?
Mm-hmm.
The issue is twofold. One, social democracies don't address some of the domestic problems because when there's still capital accumulation.
But which domestic problems?
Domestic problems such as labor issues, homelessness, like there's no way to fully eradicate that because the inherent class contradiction between the owner class and the labor class still
I feel like
exists.
that's an assumption. I don't know that that's true. That there's just going to be, there's not going to be homelessness in socialism, but there will in social democracy.
Well, the idea is that completely abolishing the profit motive in certain commodities like housing, for example, will address that problem because then you're making housing specifically for need rather than so you can make money off of existing units.
But we acknowledge that in a social democracy,
I think one of the craziest parts about this conversation was that there were, again, charlatans who we know are fans of goblin porn, okay, who tried to make it seem like I didn't do a good enough job explaining certain subjects to a person who was like being, somewhat contentious under the guise of curiosity, okay? And that is like one of the most annoying things because a lot of people don't actually just like look at a thing and let it sit and just analyze it with their own opinions. And they need someone to handhold them through this process. This has happened a couple different instances in my political career. Like when I talked to, what's his face? The Herschel Walker's son, Christian Walker, about transphobia. And obviously these are not the same. Like Ethan and Christian Walker are nowhere near the same. Like their level of curiosity and their charitability is not even on the same orbit, right? Christian Walker was deliberately trying to be transphobic. Ethan here is definitely still curious about my position. And there's a level of respect. But with Christian Walker, when I dealt with him and I talked about how like, you're being crazy for, this hyper focusing this much on like trans girls playing sports or whatever, a lot of people were like, why didn't you, dive into the data? why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Because I think that the way I dealt with it was a significantly better way, which now a lot of people also champion that position. Now that Tim Walz says they're being weird, for example, they're like, oh, it's so brilliant when Tim Walz says it. Just remember, being a real leftist is sometimes about being right just too early. And that in the future, if you were duped by other content creators in the way that they analyze certain situations and you came in here to repeat those talking points because you thought you would come across brilliant, maybe don't do that.
Run, ideally, the homeless and whoever else needs a home for whatever reason would be provided one. So I don't understand what socialism does better in that case.
At the end of the day, these countries, the social democracies that we were talking about, still have a lot of wealthy individuals, a lot of people who are making money off of finance capital and capitalism in general, and their interests are always going to be to further erode the welfare state as best as they possibly can, claw back all of those areas that they could still technically
You're
privatize.
putting that on them, but that's not, if you have a strong social democracy, that wouldn't be possible.
Ethan then asks another.
That's not true. And that is happening in Europe. All around Europe, where when there was a counterbalance like the USSR, when capital owners were truly afraid of like too much labor momentum turning the tide of capital, they actually made concessions to allow the welfare state to exist. But now that there is no USSR, now that there is no counterbalance, look at all the European states. They've lost so many aspects of their welfare state. People have become increasingly more reactionary. Fascist ideology is rising. And inevitably, no matter what happens, there's always going to be that push and pull. There's no like middle ground on this subject, unfortunately. As long as capital exists, it will always be a parasitic force that tries to claw back as much power as it physically can get. And historically, this is precisely what has happened in Europe. If you look at, certain aspects of like even the medical system being purposely crippled, purposely underfunded in the UK, you have a national healthcare system in the UK, and the NHS has been purposely defunded by politicians that are backed by corporate interests in an effort to inevitably privatize certain aspects of that system. People get upset, people get increasingly more mad at the way things are, and they have no way. And both parties are obviously captured. Both major parties are obviously captured by capital interests, whether it be the Labour Party, who are basically light Tories, or the Tory Party, and then they turn around and inevitably bring in an era of privatization. It's happening in Canada as well. Scandinavian countries had decades-long lockdown, concentrated political power monopoly, and these states are now being crippled by austerity and privatization. Yeah, exactly. Olof Palme, baby. Regime enjoyers in Sweden. Look at where they're at now.
Another question he's quite unwilling to hear the answer to. Are workers still being exploited if all their needs in housing, food, and healthcare are being met?
Worker exploitation seems to be at the heart of socialism and communism. Yes. And so I want to ask you this question. If an employee is fairly compensated, and by fairly I mean factors like work, compensation, they're being paid well beyond the means of living. If they're provided in all those ways that we see as important, is that still exploitation?
In the Marxist perspective, under Marxian economics, Marxist theory, exploitation is not a good or bad thing. It is just a thing that happens.
Okay.
And it goes back to something I've described many, many times over. There are two classes. There is the labor class, the wage laborers, the proletariat, and the bourgeois class, the capital owning class, right? Mm-hmm. And these two classes have two inherently contradictory interests. As someone who worked, you wanted to work the least amount of hours for the most amount of pay. Your boss, on the other hand, wants you to work the most amount of hours for the least amount of pay. This inherent contradiction is at the heart of capitalism and is how commodities are produced under a capitalist mode of production. When you have this imbalance, those who do have capital end up always being able to pay you much less than your actual output.
So that is what's happening now. So is it still exploitation of workers if they're fairly provided for?
Yes.
Because there is no fairness in that situation. If you are not getting back the surplus value that you have created, or you have no democratic means of changing the way that your surplus labor value is being spent, then it is still exploitation under a Marxian understanding of exploitation. That's simply what it is. Profit is exploitation. For those of you who don't understand, that's what this is. Now, if you consider that to be good or bad, that's when things get tricky. If you consider that exploitation to be fair, that level of exploitation of what happens with your surplus labor value, if you consider that to be fair, then you are probably not a Marxist. Telling my boss this on Monday, good luck. Saying that this is fair, the assessment of fairness in this circumstance is actually a loaded premise. Probably should have dealt with that a little bit better when Ethan brought that up in terms of like being a pure debate pervert.
Because the fairness in this regard is not met on the metrics of like living standards, but instead on the metrics of what their output is.
If the employee is extremely satisfied, and they feel well provided for, who are you to tell him he's being exploited?
Ethan continues in his failure to learn and brings up a similar question in the field of workers' rights. Why should workers be given democracy in the workplace in the form of decision-making and profit sharing when they themselves did not create the business?
Would it be exploitation if all the revenue minus its expenses was distributed evenly through the workplace? Wait, first of all, distributed evenly? Like, no one is talking about even distribution here. I just want everybody to understand, Marxism is not egalitarian. Marxism is not about like offering every single person the same exact amount of money or the same exact compensation. Okay. It's about having the same say in the process at the least. Okay. There is no world in which every single person is going to be doing an equal amount of work and contribute an equal amount of output. Okay. There's like, some people might do that. I do that with my podcast, as you guys know, but that's not inherently Marxist. It's just, you know, a different way of organizing. It's a cooperative corporation. But yes, each according to their ability and each according to their needs does not mean like everyone on a basketball team gets to make the same amount of points and no one actually wins or anything like that. That's not how this works at all. How do employee-owned companies fit into this? That's a great question. I mean, every single company works differently, but in terms of the way that profits are distributed after your base wage pay is given to you, in like depending on how much revenue the company has generated, you get to have a say in the process of how that revenue is distributed. Sometimes it might be we get all of the revenue and it's distributed amongst different groups within the organization. Like, you know, 20% goes to the janitor staff, 20% goes to the executive staff, 30% goes to the executive staff. But it's all about having a say in that process. It's all about having a genuine ownership stake in the company. Just mentioned Star Trek. Not everyone's the captain. You still need the mechanics. Exactly. And it does not mean that the captain and the mechanics are going to be paid the exact same either. Well, Star Trek is technically communist, so there is not really, they've moved beyond the need for money in their society. My dry cleaner uses profit to open stores and increase intake while keeping the workload on the fewest people. Yep. At my work, we have town hall meetings. They talk quarterly forecasts, blah, blah, blah. They basically dictate what's going on. In my optimal company, we go to that town hall meeting and each employee has an agenda card and we vote on a set of issues. Yes. The irony is, capitalist corporations have a semblance of that. What you just described is quite literally a capitalist corporation, which is authoritarian in nature, making it seem like you have a say in the actual output of the company, making it seem like you have a say in the process. So they know how this is done. They have the capacity to run it that way. They just don't want to give you the share. They don't want to give you the vote. They don't want to give you the opportunity to make demands. Because why? Because those demands would eat away at the share of profits that those at the tippy top get to dictate what to do with.
Business.
I want to give you a specific example because this is interesting to me. Let's just take this workplace as an example because we're all familiar with it. I started my career 10 plus years ago and I was successful.
I also don't personally know like what the best use case for like Marxian economists works in a global marketplace. Like I'll be the first to admit that. You know what I mean? I try to do right. I do understand that, like, ultimately, considering that this is a capitalist global marketplace, like, you have to rely on the magnanimous nature of a boss in that regard. And I would be the boss in this situation. But, you know, I don't know if there is like a mathematical equation that gives you the perfect number, the perfect dollar value.
By myself with 0 employees. I made a lot of money.
Because there's someone in the labor theory of value still applicable in a service-based economy. Follow-up, if it is like a recession year. Are employees in a socialist system obligated to pay you above the revenue generated by your labor, even if the value brought in by your labor nets you below living wage, such as in a bad recession year? Exactly. Like, I don't have a good answer for that question. But I do know that, like, in a recession year, employers in a socialist system are obligated to pay you above the revenue generated by your labor is not correct. Also, the idea is that, like, you're describing capitalist market conditions ultimately, like in terms of recession years and inflationary shocks.
Did well for myself. And then, 5 years ago into my career, I made the podcast, which obviously you all are watching now. Let's say we go back to 5 years ago when I hired Dan as a freelance. You started as like a consultant.
Yeah, or a freelancer. Yeah.
And obviously you moved to full-time, and I'll get to that. So he started as like a freelance consultant. What would be a fair way of compensating him for that?
And when Hassan gives him an answer, Ethan no longer wants to talk about
socialist workplace works. It seems so nebulous when you talk about it.
Why is it? I don't think it's nebulous at all.
There's gotta be. Okay,
I have a living, breathing, working example of it that I've given you.
I know, but like, there's got to be like a constitution that says, outlines, or I don't know, whatever the you want to write, right? There's got to be something, and it says like, or laws that says, this is the minimum that a person should get from the company.
Yes. And it should be married to the output. It should be married to the productive forces. It should be married to the output. That should be pegged.
We talked about this enough, though. I don't want to bore people.
That should be pegged to the performance. And I think that is the best possible way to work.
I guess
For the record, there was a second part of the conversation about social democracies and how they inevitably fail. I gave the first example in domestic inequality. And then I actually expanded on that to talk about the global inequality, which is the over-reliance on exploitation of the third world, of developing nations, the unequal exchange with the global south. And that is obviously the broadest reaching and most consequential aspect of global capitalism. But Ethan did not want to talk about that in that situation. But I think that is like, for those of you who want me to elaborate further, it's something that I talked about quite a bit. It's something that I have talked about quite a bit, rather. But I do, often I don't like to talk about it because, this is a nation in the imperial core. Many of you are watching from Western nations, so you do benefit from that. So you are a little bit of a labor arista KKK rat in that regard, which is why I think it gets touchy when people talk about that. I think we're not there yet in terms of our understanding, our class consciousness, in order to invoke class consciousness and a sense of and instill a sense of solidarity among American laborers with respect to, like, the children mining minerals in Congo. So there is that as well. People get really touchy about that when they start having to reckon with that reality. What also needs to be mentioned is that Marxism leftist theory do not automatically equate to a more charitable social norms either. This is to say socialism, Marxism will not make people better people. It's an economic structure, not a social one. Marxism can lead to better living outcomes, but it will still produce people. It's about minimizing those people. Exactly. Just like I always say. A lot of people are hurt. Hurt people hurt people. If you eliminate one of the major issues that they have in their lives, they are less likely to become unstable. They're less likely to become little freaks that say Haitians are eating cats and dogs. That's why I always say Medicare for all means for all. It includes Nazis as well. The entire goal of systemic change such as this one is to stop more Nazis from existing.
Problem on that is, like, how could you possibly
enforce that?
No, not even enforce. How could you possibly even analyze that? Like, how much more money are we making because the janitor comes?
That's where we go to the Walmart example. That, like, we are already completely aware of that. We have actuaries, we have CPAs that are working in real time, making mathematical equations to figure out exactly what not to pay people technically, and they could be in a total social reorganization. This is also the other aspect of this story, which is that there are already pre-existing constructs within a capitalist economy that we use to the advantage of capital, and that could absolutely flip in a moment's notice, almost overnight, if magically capitalism turned into socialism. All of those forces that currently work at the behest of capital would be able to make these same mathematical equations, but this time for workers. So that is, I mean, obviously that's not going to happen, but the notion that we have no way of calculating this sort of thing is actually wrong. I think, what is it? The People's Republic of Walmart was the name of the book that dives further into like the command economy and centralization and how it has actually occurred inside of capitalist corporations in a way that like corporations now that have like the same output and the same revenue structure of an entire nation at this point, and therefore we have the tools and we are actually using them. We're just simply not using them at the behest of workers and using them at the behest of the capital owners right now. Like, look at Amazon. You know what I mean? That's an entire nation state in and of itself. Of the economy with a socialist dogma would work in the opposite direction.
Okay.
It's kind of like this.
Please, let's move to another topic.
Okay,
I don't want to bore people.
All in all, this episode was very entertaining, despite some frustrating moments from Ethan. And it even went an hour longer than usual, given how entertaining and important of a conversation it was. This Leftovers episode was definitely not a contributing factor to the conclusion of the Leftovers podcast, but it definitely was a sneak peek for what's to come. Ethan's debate purgatory ego had reached a point of no return, a final form in which Ethan could not be incorrect. So after a few weeks had passed of some pretty normal episodes of the Leftovers podcast, something catastrophic took place, once again sparking the need for discussion on the Leftovers podcast.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jim Sciutto in Washington. It is now 4 a.m. in where Israel is striking back at targets after these attacks we saw play out over the last 24 hours. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country is at the militant group launched an unprecedented early morning series of attacks on Israel, firing at least 5,000.
Question, brother, for a social democracy like Norway, how exactly is it exploiting the global south? For example, the Norwegian pension fund is generated primarily through surplus oil revenues. Even further, Norway does not exist in a vacuum. Every commodity that you purchase as a Norwegian person when you go into a Norwegian market is still in some way directly tied to the global economy, and the global economy is capitalist, and therefore, like when you are like Norwegians use iPhones, you know what I mean? It's the simplest example, right? Norwegians use iPhones. Think about the process in which you have to extract natural resource from the global south in an effort to make those iPhones, right? Like just the batteries alone are exactly what I'm talking about in terms of like social democracies still relying heavily on the exploitation of the global south. It's not, and for the record, when I explain this sort of stuff, people get very mad. They're like in their feelings. They're like, what the you do that too? And it's like, I know. I have this recognition. It is also something that is impossible to avoid. That's why leftists will say there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, because it's just impossible. You cannot exist outside of the grid, right? Let's say you try to exist outside of the grid. You bought an axe at Home Depot. You didn't make the axe yourself. You literally had certain materials inside of that axe that at some point absolutely touched basically slave labor hands, you know? This is why Lenin was absolutely correct when he said imperialism is the final stage of capitalism and is an absolute necessity. Imperialism is a necessity under capitalism because you have to consistently eke out slimmer and slimmer profit margins as the profit rates have a tendency to decline. So then you have to look for new markets. And the only way to keep certain markets low enough so that your profits are high enough in the Western world, you have to keep them servile. You have to keep them, you know, in conditions. That's why Parenti said, I think it was Parenti who said, Africa is not poor. Africa is rich. You don't rob a poor person. You rob a rich person. Africa has been kept poor because of its immense wealth. Or maybe he said that about South America.
In rockets, Israel says at least 300 Israelis are. more than 1,500 wounded. This was not just rocket attacks, though. The terror group overran border.
They are underdeveloped and they're not underdeveloped. They are overexploited.
Crossings invaded by sea, by air, and by land, taking over entire Israeli communities in the south. We must warn you, many of these images are graphic and frightening.
However, leading up to this episode, Ethan has some initial discussion of the October 7 attacks on October 9th.
So over the weekend, it was the governing, they're organization, but they're also control strip. They somehow managed to put together this surprise invasion of into Israel, and it was, it was horrific. So far, at least 700 Israelis, which is nuts. One of the crazy things was there was a nature party, a peace party, they actually call it, ironically, and I guarantee a lot of people there were pro-peace, who are anti Netanyahu and all that kind of stuff. And so
yeah, for sure, they were all young. Definitely that type of crowd that is unhappy with the government.
The really sad, kind of crazy thing is that, I don't know if this has changed, but last that I heard, didn't even know about the party. They just happened upon it.
This discussion was pretty tame, and mostly understandable coming from two Israelis after such a catastrophe took place.
Ethan is not even technically Israeli, for the record. I don't think. Like, Ethan went on birthright, no? I don't think he's Israeli.
Ethan even made sure to make his stance clear about the Israeli government. Not by speaking from the heart, but by reading a tweet of a note.
No. He did. He has citizenship. He lived there, but he went on birthright. I think his parents might be... I don't know. I actually don't even know. I should know this. I know he lived in Israel. I know he lived in Israel because I remember him talking about like working in a casino and but his origins are SoCal.
Notes app screenshot from 2021.
You know what? Let me do this. Let me just tell you, first of all, just so it's not ambiguous about how I feel about this situation as a whole. Okay? Let me just say this. I tweeted this. I think this was when the IDF blew up some apartment building or some horrific a few years ago. I said the Israeli government's making me sick. Even if it's operating as civilian buildings, it doesn't justify the total destruction of that building. It's inhumane. Netanyahu's a piece of warmonger. It needs to go. As a dual citizen, I love Israel and the Israeli people. They deserve a government that actually believes in peace and not force. The ultra-right Jewish settlers.
It's like saying you're not American because you grew up in Turkey. Come on, dude. No, I didn't know that he had Israeli citizenship. Someone corrected me and said that he does. But like culturally, like I don't think Ethan is Israeli culturally. I think Ethan is American. Like, what are we talking about? It also doesn't even matter, honestly. Like, we're not talking about his background. We're talking about what he is saying. Also, this is very important for the record. They're shameless and hateful, fueled by religious zeal and enabled by the Israeli government. Ultra-right Jewish settlers. I wish settling and repossession land would stop. I wish the people would stop. Or live in life free of fear. For all the crimes Hamas has committed, we must always remember that they are not Palestine. The Israeli government holds all the power, and it is on them to stop them to show a true willingness for peace. So,
settlers among the greatest provocateurs in the world.
This is in May 15, 2021, Chad.
By
remember
religious zeal and enabled by the Israeli government. I wish the settling and repossession of Palestinian land would stop. I wish them would stop. Deserve to live a life free of fear. For all the crimes has committed, we must always remember that they are not Palestine. The Israeli government holds all the power and is on them to stop this and show a true willingness for peace. Okay.
For the record, like this right here in May 15, 2021 is like 90% there. You know what I mean? It recognized the humanity of Palestinians. Like, yes, it's not like, it still treats us like an aberration, as a separate entity, as a group that, like, it doesn't come with the conclusion that like people that are pushed into a corner that feel like they have no way out of that corner were inevitably going to lash back, right? They're inevitably going to fight back to fight their way out of that corner. There are definitely in this chat law, point to them and we'll ban them. But if you can't find like at least a couple right now that we haven't banned already, I'm going to ban you. Point to them right now. You'd be doing us a service. This is not something that is ever tolerated. If you've been in here since 2024, July 17th, you would know that. You should know that. We smoke Nazis on a daily basis. Is that chatter even Jewish, Lamau? One of those of us who are would be the first to point him out. Yeah, exactly. Maybe he might be. Who knows? How the classic Hitlerian politics unite the mass against a fictional minority that's coming to destroy society? How the fuck did this happen? How do you have this opinion? And then you go, they're definitely in this chat. Well, go ahead, tell me who they are. Aaron Lopez. I saw a comment that said he's still a bloodthirsty Zionist a few minutes ago. Point to who the comment is. Also, in terms of people saying he's a bloodthirsty Zionist, like, that is the opinion of a chatter who I disagree with, because I'm currently making the argument that he is not a bloodthirsty Zionist. But you also need to understand that this is not devoid of any sort of context in and of itself. Okay? This is coming from after Ethan made fun of Aaron Bushnell. This is coming from Ethan saying that this community is, like, calling someone a Zionist if they are in any way, shape, or form defending the state of Israel is not a slur. It's just what it is. Okay? Also, I think classic young Republican, he talked about how hot that pause was, sadly ignorant. He's still a bloodthirsty Zionist either way. These are the exact same types of chatters, for the record. These are the exact same type of long-term community subscribers who pop off on me in the exact same way any moment that they find a minor infraction. Okay? Just so you understand. This is something that I tried to communicate to Ethan personally and tried to tell him, like, listen, this is how politics is. This is how, like, political audiences are like. Okay? This is how they operate. If they find something that is even a minor infraction, as much as I have whipped my community into shape, as much as I've tried to make people in my community be normal about, like, analyzing the collective total of a person's opinions that they can see and not just have such hardline opinions, they're never going to do that. Okay? If you recall, a very famous moment of mine when I went to Australia was literally a Hassanabi head who was wearing my merch, who came up to me at a pro-Palestinian demonstration and yelled at me for drinking Coca-Cola. Okay? Does that person actually think I am a Zionist? Does that person actually think that I'm not sufficiently defending Palestine? In that moment, they did. And if the only way to analyze that situation, and this is understandable, by the way, this is totally understandable. If the only way that you can analyze the situation is off of, like, what you have seen, and especially if you're seeing it over and over and over and over and over again in the chat, you're going to start internalizing it and be like, damn, okay, damn. I yell at chatters like this on a daily basis, okay? I yell at chatters like this on a daily basis. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I overreacted. I'm sorry. This statement that Ethan is reading here is the same type of statement that libs make when Trump is in power. Same vibe. Talk until there are real stakes for you and you have to do something. Yeah, that's ridiculous to say, especially about a dude who lived in Israel, especially at a time in 2021 when many members of this community were probably also unfamiliar with what was going on in Israel or in Palestine, or beyond that, Ethan himself, the expectation is he's going to be full-blown in support of Israel. So for him, it's extra nutty to have a take like that. What the fuck are you talking about? He is not. No, that's not liberal Zionism. Liberal Zionism, and I can't speak for what Ethan's perspective is now, but here, this is not liberal Zionism, because liberal Zionism does not actually treat Palestinians as human beings. Okay? Liberal Zionism is simply makeup over the inherent fascist perspective of Zionism. Okay? I saw the comment. Totally get that. Ethan is a gross Zionist. This is what I mean. This issue, considering that it is an ongoing, invokes a lot of sentiment in a lot of chatters. And if you have no capacity to analyze this from the lens of, like, these people are not saying Ethan is a Zionist because he's Jewish. Okay? These people are not saying Ethan is a Zionist because he's Jewish. They're saying Ethan is a Zionist because they think Ethan is a Zionist. And he might be. I don't know. But here, I'm trying to explain to you that this is like 90% the closest you can arrive at. If you think any of those people are Nazis or in general, you're wrong. Like, that's a ridiculous assessment to make. Who doesn't think Ethan is a Zionist? He's a self-described one.
So, just so it's not unambiguous.
Now, I wouldn't say this discussion was completely tame, as Ethan got quite caught up in the timing of it all, criticizing people for saying Free Palestine as the attacks were taking place.
I think what people don't understand when they say that
Are you making the comparison to the Australian girl because you think Cheddar's calling Ethan a Zionist is the same as her? No, I'm not. I'm using that as an example of like people yell at me all the time too. There is a level of validity to the criticisms, especially if that's your output, especially if that is what you're communicating to people, people that are outside of my immediate community, mind you. So that's another thing that you have to recognize. This is why I started off the conversation by talking about, what was I saying? Talking about how there are members in his own community that are completely removed from mine that would much rather watch him than me that might still have these kinds of opinions. Okay? They have these exact same kinds of opinions regardless. It has nothing to do with me at all. And if you mistake that kind of criticism that you're receiving from your very progressive community with like me egging them on, then you're missing the forest for the trees to a certain degree. Does that make sense? That is simply the point I was making originally. I think chatters are confused because Zionists is consistently used to replace Jews. Sometimes it's understandably difficult, especially as a Jewish person myself, to distinguish how the term is being used. That's why I don't like to call people Zionists. Instead, call them pro-Israel since it fits the title best. I don't want my words to be misconstrued as saying Jew, so I don't exactly love to call people Zionists. Yeah, I mean, but objectively, you are a Zionist. What? Yes, you're right. I am. I am pro only the Israeli state from the river to the sea. You caught me. Okay. I am pro ad break. I'm pro ad break for you and you only. If only there was a way to do it. Oh, this is the objectively chatter. Oh my God. So annoying. The hyperfixation of this chatter is just me saying objectively. Yeah. Am Israel high.
That is like what it means to somebody in Israel who's going through grieving right now of so many people around them and their life as it used to be. Nobody knows right now what to expect and how long this war is going to last. Like when you come out and say free Palestine after they just lost everybody, they have children taken away from them. That's not, if you're really for humanitarian reasons, that's not. No,
like I disagree with this. You know, much love to Gila, but I disagree with this sentiment. Saying free Palestine in that moment it comes with the recognition of all of the things that happened on October 6th, on October 5, on October 4, on October 3rd. It comes with the recognition of, at the time, 75 years of apartheid, right? Like that is the reality. And this is just, I think what's crazy about this, and you guys need to stop, you need to shut up. There are probably so many people in here right now that are literally logging every single thing that you are saying, and they're going to use that against me and against the broader point that I'm trying to make. You're falling for the bait. You really, really need to. I can't ban every single person in the chat, okay? But this is an unimaginably frustrating situation because a lot of you get up in your feelings and you want to say the most unhinged you can, not recognizing that there are literally currently at least 300 to 1,000 people that are watching, not just me and not what I'm saying so that they can purposely misconstrue it, but also to look at chat so they can log each individual person, okay? Log each individual person. This is literally the reason why I hate talking about the subject from the perspective of what Ethan says, because 0 people actually care about my opinion on the matter. 0 people, including those who are saying unhinged in the chat right now. None of you actually care about the way that you are presenting yourself. None of you actually care any longer about Israel nor Palestine. You just simply want to talk in the chat because you think you're being anonymous. But every single thing that you say right now is being logged so that it can be used against what I'm saying, okay? Because there are thousands of hate watchers that are sitting in here right now that are purposely crafting the narrative that you are, okay? Think about the student protests. Think about how well they conducted themselves. Think about what happened in the aftermath of the way that they conducted themselves, and people still consider them to be. And if they couldn't find a way to, massage the narrative, they made up fake chats. Okay, I'm going to put the chat in emote mode because a lot of you are annoying. And if you think you can get away with it in the Discord as well, I will ban you from Discord too. Okay, many of you want me to cover subject matter like this because you love drama. All right, But in an effort, even when I'm doing it, you can't hold yourself back. You get so autistic. Like your hyperfixation turns into just saying the most like unhinged, knowing full well that someone is out there just logging every single time someone in here says some unhinged that you wouldn't personally agree with, you know, if you had a calmer mind. But in that moment, it doesn't matter. Your community does not understand that they're taking bait from other communities when they drama bait this. They're hurting you by doing this, by tweeting, by saying in Discord. Exactly. Because absolutely zero people care about my well thought out, well balanced perspective on this issue. Most people simply want to say Hassan hates Ethan because he's Jewish. Okay. And you are just giving people an opportunity for them to craft a wonderful narrative like that, undoing undoing a decade of work I've put into, one, being on it, and two, being, because you just learned about yesterday, okay? And you are hyper passionate and you want to show everybody how passionate you are. And the only mechanism to show how passionate and how with you are is by chirping about a content creator you see on screen and calling them a Nazi, okay? Shut the up. This is precisely what I've described a million times over. This is exactly why I hate covering this issue, because Ethan's perspective on this matter is completely irrelevant to me, okay? It doesn't change the dynamic of geopolitics, okay? It doesn't change the dynamic of America's undying loyalty to continuing to facilitate. You saying Hila is a Nazi is not going to save anyone. It's just going to make you look like an asshole, and it's going to make me look like an asshole, because they're going to clip that and turn around and say, see, this is the community he's fostered. And you don't even believe that anyway. You don't. In the moment, you're mad, so you want to show everyone how pro-Palestine you are. That's it. That's all this is. It's understandable to be passionate about this issue, but you also have to recognize the environment that you're in, okay? A lot of you don't understand that the American government and the way that they analyze pro-Palestinian sentiment is just, you're a terrorist, okay? They currently are literally behind closed doors going, how the f do we deal with so many goddamn children talking about how much they love, okay? Shut the f up. It's very annoying. And let me tell you, okay, people that have fucking been doing this for years have definitely a very different framework of how to carry on their message, okay? You think, what's his name, Muin Rabban, or any number of different like Muslim commentators, think about the way they carry themselves. Think about the way they talk about this issue. Why do you think they talk about this issue like this? You think Rashid Khalidi is going to say like this? You think Edward Said would have said like this? No. You want to know why? Because they understand the environment they're in. I've been saying this since October 7. Never think that you can be even remotely as callous as someone who defends Israel, okay? They can say everything about you and you can say nothing. You have to put your best foot forward, okay? You should never, ever, ever say like this. God damn, you live in America. That's exactly what I said about Edward Said got his office simply for existing as a Palestinian in higher ed. Yeah, people who have been in favor of Palestinian emancipation, especially those from Arab background or from Muslim backgrounds, have known this reality for decades, okay? I'm sorry, I don't want to hear from white people in Iowa. I love how excited everyone is in terms of Palestinian emancipation, but I don't want to hear, you know, people chirping, especially when they're not the ones who are going to get deported, okay? I just wish your young viewers who are borderline obsessive about you would trust what you say on the... Yeah, come on, guys. Please. Being a leftist is about getting on every damn day of the week, okay? But still maintaining your principles and trying to make sure that you can communicate a better future for all people, okay? Including people who are living inside of Israel. It's very disappointing. But now you know why I don't talk about this that much from this perspective. Now you know why I don't talk about what Ethan has said about me, because some of you do get out of control.
What you should be saying right now.
And I'm Free Palestine too, right? It's just the timing. I know what it is. You're saying I support. I mean, that's what you're saying. Maybe not even intentionally, you know. But that
it might not be intentionally, but that is what it means.
Now, as I've explained in a previous video, the news break was quite vague at the time. So much of the breaking news was focused on the destruction of the wall and the escape of not the mass atrocities. So hearing the great news of freedom, I and many others were quick to say, "Free Palestine." But for the most part, this reaction from two Israelis was understandable. For the most part.
Ethan, please learn more about this. Shut the f*** up.
What was not so understandable was Ethan's reaction and commentary in the following H3 podcast episode.
Emote mode ends and immediately someone comes in and has to do this. Like immediately. God damn. That's crazy. That's crazy. Y'all can't behave at all. This is precisely the reason why it's also impossible to moderate. It's impossible to moderate to that degree a massive community. It's probably D-Chatters cosplaying. It absolutely is not. Okay? It absolutely is not. It's this community. It's long-term community subscribers that chirp at me every moment of the day too. The problem is this is a very different issue. This is not about me. This is not someone yelling. How many times do I ban 48-month subscribers that come in here and will be like, you are not sufficiently leftist. You actually have completely given up on the leftist project. You love Kamala Harris. How many times do I yell at a long-term community subscriber? Okay? No, it's people that love being incredibly annoying. I think Ethan doesn't see this because if he did, he would know how much you're trying to clean up chat. No, I've told him this. He just must not believe me if he doesn't think so. Oh, be normal, dude. Be normal. You're not doing praxis by typing enough Twitch chat. Like, if I ever catch someone being like, oh, Gila is like Palestinian children or whatever, I'm gonna ban you. You're an unhinged psycho, dude. You're a weirdo. Okay? Sorry, you are. Like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you saying? Like, what are you saying? There's veterans in this community too. Do you treat them in the same way? There's American veterans. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, do you not live in the real world? Like, what do you, this conversation is so frustrating because it like breaks the boundary of the real world and online because the people that we're talking about are people that I know in the real world. Okay? Is that what you do to your uncle who's a veteran or to your cousin who's a veteran? You walk up to him and you're like, you raping 14-year-olds, you piece of, I hope you enjoyed your trip to Iraq. Is that what you do? You're such a base leftist. You're the Mr. Troop Exploder. Shut the up. Be normal, man. Jesus Christ. And when people say that about all American vets, I yell at them too. No, it's because you normally have the smoke for other YouTubers except Etard. Like, this is what I mean, okay? I don't even know the collective total of Ethan's, like, personal opinion on the matter, but I seemingly will never find out by the end of this video if you guys consistently try to make the argument about yourself, okay? Have the smoke. What do you mean, have the smoke? Ethan is wrong on this, dude. I'm not saying he's right on this, but him being wrong on this doesn't change the reality that like you guys can behave in this way in the chat, especially considering that there are a ton of people in this community right now alongside you waiting for the opportunity, salivating to make a fool of all of you and myself. Okay?
So, where for whatever reason, Ethan decided to pick a fight with a Muslim woman who happened to be one of Hassan's mods, a Lebanese Twitch.
I don't chirp at you. I'm trying to be my most best faith, honest self. I promise. I have family in Israel and lost so many friends and connections from advocating for Palestine. I don't live in Ohio and I don't have an issue with anyone at H3. I think Ethan should just know better and give you and your community a sliver of grace you award him. Yeah, I agree. No, I don't disagree with you. It's just that this very reasonable take that you just mentioned is not going to make it to the supercut that like Boner Chelly's loving community is salivating to make. No one is going to hear this. They're only going to see the randoms in the chat being like, this guy's a bloodthirsty Zionist. Oh, you, okay? Do you salute soldiers over time? You see them? Always. I suck them off too. I love that I'm like, listen, this is not a community. And then chatters are like desperately trying to present it in a way as unhinged as possible so that outsiders who are themselves half the time can present it as though this community is because it's so passionately anti-Israel. Okay? You have no understanding of how like the average normie looks at this situation because you're trapped in this echo chamber here. Okay? You think everyone has the same exact opinions as you do. No. Well, them, they're being bad faith and will something to be bad faith about them? Yeah, it doesn't matter because the reality is that's not how the real world works. Okay? Don't give them an extra opportunity.
Twitch streamer by the name Frogan.
I don't know if this is drunk. I guess that I can talk about is that this girl Frogan.
Frogan.
Oh, Frogan. That's what I'm saying. I don't even know how to say her name. I just followed her because you know, there was a lot of mutuals that were following her, and she seemed like a nice person, so that's why I followed her.
She was a mod for Hassan, and me and Lena are friends with her as well.
Okay. I just quietly unfollowed her, okay? I didn't like the tweets she was making. I thought they were, like, leaning too much towards pro. And
AB's like, and we're friends with her as well.
Just didn't like it. I didn't want to see it. And so I quietly unfollowed her. I didn't make a big deal. I didn't say anything. But, like, she got to turn it into this whole big thing that turns into a drama that's now being posted all over the internet. I'm sorry. It's a Twitter follow. It's not that serious, okay? First of all, and foremost, that face when one of your favorite content creators unfollows you for being pro-Palestine. Like, first of all, the framing of that is f***ed up.
Do you see that D is trying to leverage the situation to his advantage and is talking to Ethan behind the scenes plenty on stream? You see his recent Reddits visited. Destiny's always there. I don't care. Okay? I don't. I mean, great. Like, sure, fine. Who cares? Okay? I don't think that Ethan's worldview is ultimately compatible with someone who I mean, exactly the type of person who he like routinely on. And I don't think that it's like, I think people want to be appreciated. I think people want to be liked. Okay? And if a community of people are being like, you suck, whether for good reason or for bad reason, and a group of people take advantage of that and say, we love you, you're doing a great job, they are going to absolutely take advantage of that situation. And of course, I don't even fault him for potentially going there to find talking points or whatever. He's permanently on Reddit.
Okay, let's not even go there. You don't even know why I unfollowed you. You don't know. You don't have no information. We've never even talked. You said Ethan Klein unfollowed Frogan. Ethan Prob was like, this damn Arab supports. That's not funny. That's not funny at all. Like, the whole framing of this is really.
I try to tell him, like, this is literally, that is a Destiny. Isn't that, I know this username. Isn't this like a Bonercelli massive fan? Straight up, every time there's a LSF post, of me, it's that. Wait, hold on. How do I know usernames? Why do I know a Redditor? Because this has posted so many LSF clips of me that they know him on LSF. He's probably in here right now, salivating.
Cruel. Ethan, I'll support the IDF. Refollow me. I don't support the IDF either. It's not funny. The reason I unfollowed her, because apparently she wants to know, is because of this tweet specifically and a few others. But this is the one that I was like, I don't want to see this anymore. She said, leftists preach and foam at the mouth at the thought of a revolution happening in America. But as soon as it happens in the...
Is the porn star James Dean still around? Been around since 2018, dog. How many alt accounts have you think? He got banned in 2021. He is clipped. He is like one of my top 5 clippers. Jobless ass. Account created in 2012. Oh yeah. Real freak. It's different when you use that word as an insult. Even if you're right, this just fosters division and toxicity. It's just like ACAP, pointless rhetoric, and you just make us look stupid. Us, you've been a hater. You've been a hater for years. Us. Aren't you bringing back trauma for black people when you say the C word? The best arguments. Most recent clip of you was from 3 months ago. I feel like that corresponds to LSF's like ban of Destiny Hassan clips. Perhaps he stopped clipping when he couldn't farm karma anymore. And also because I stopped clipping in general. You've been clipping me for 5 years, brother. Holy.
The Middle East of that building. It's inhumane. Netanyahu's a piece of warmonger and needs to go. As a dual citizen, I love Israel and the Israeli people. They deserve a government that actually believes in peace and not force them. The ultra-right Jewish settlers are among the greatest provocateurs in the world. They're shameless, hateful, fueled by religious zeal, and enabled by the Israeli government. I wish the settling and repossession of Palestinian land would stop. I wish the would stop. Deserve to live in a life free of fear. And for all that has committed, we must always remember that they are not Palestine, which somehow you don't seem to understand either. The Israeli government holds all of the power, and it's on them to stop them and show a true willingness to peace. That's the last time I talked about Israel. Do you want to keep saying this about me, or do you want to apologize? Because it sounds to me like...
I think what's crazy about this is that, like, Ethan is very frustrated and very emotional in this moment, but doesn't recognize that, like, perhaps a Lebanese woman who's a hijabi in the United States of America could also be very emotional in this exact same moment. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's so, and the reality of the matter is an unacceptable form of bigotry, whereas Islamophobia is a very acceptable form of bigotry. So being the bigger person in this situation, regardless of your feelings, is absolutely to not unload with a much larger audience on a person of this background. You know what I mean? She was ultimately correct, though. Ethan did unfollow her because she seemed too pro for his days. Now he's so angry and doing the how dare you bit. Like, it's funny because, like, I tried to tell Ethan at the time, I was like, you know, Frogan's like a massive fan of yours. Like, they're not, like, she's not, what is it? Oh, I gotta go. I gotta finish. I'll finish this tomorrow. I gotta do the podcast.
It's time to go to work.
I know. Austin's here.
Sorry, guys. Got to turn off the computer for the night.
I might not even get back to this video, to be honest. I mean, we'll see. I might get back to it. Who knows? The thing I hate more than anything else is that, like, you guys know what my opinion is on the things that actually do matter, right? You know what my opinion is on things that actually do matter, such as Israel, Palestine. Okay? All this does, by my estimation, is just, it causes unnecessary friction and drama, and it will absolutely turn into a much larger conversation. Like, it'll turn into quote unquote drama content. And I hate giving some of the biggest scumbags on the internet a crumb of clout off of this because they eat so goddamn good. Okay? That's it. And the reality is my audience does not listen to me at all. You don't. And you are so annoying when you don't listen to me. Okay? We're talking about people getting arrested for protesting for Palestine in places like Michigan, in college campuses all around the country, and you dumps are in the chat chirping. You know what I mean? It's just, you're chirping about drama. You're chirping about drama, and you're actually creating more drama, which inevitably ends up harming whatever values you espouse. And like, if your goal is to have your audience reach as broad, have this message reach as broad an audience as possible, and then your other goal is to basically your other goal is to basically chirp as much as you can in an emotional moment because you feel unhinged at that moment and you can't stop yourself, then you have to always remember, I said it after October 7th and it bears repeating now, advocates for Palestine must be 100 times more careful than defenders of Israeli apartheid, and since there's a whole ecosystem to smear and ostracize pro-Palestinian voices, it's not fair, but it is what it is. Exactly. Do not let your interest in chirping in the chat get in the way of you trying to communicate a much more important desire for a free Palestine. And you do that. You do that. You get ahead of yourselves. And it doesn't even matter. Even if you don't do that, they're going to smear you as anti-Semitic anyway. So why the f are you saying things that are unhinged? Why? Stop. It's like so much brigade. This reaction to this video is precisely why Leftovers ended. Okay? Because it's no longer about an emotional subject, such as, okay? But it's an emotional subject with an association of two communities that are at odds with one another and are very parasocially invested in the outcome. Okay? That's it. That's it. I can't even get through a video for 33 minutes before chat starts going crazy. Okay? Everyone is terminally online and everyone wants to scream into the void like nobody can hear them. And it's a perfectly understandable desire, especially given the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands that have been so far. Okay? But you have to think about it from the perspective of, is what I'm doing actually going to advance the cause? Or will it be used against the cause? Okay? That's why. And that's also precisely the reason why I don't, like, no matter what Ethan says, I don't cover it. Because I think that I know better than you do the way that this environment works. I know that Ethan can say whatever he wants about me and my community, okay, at the end of the day, or about Frogan or about the mods, okay? And that will not receive the same level of scrutiny that whatever random chatters, not me, random chatters in the chat are saying, okay? That's it. That's it. So if you can't think about it from the perspective of just like being normal and not insane and unhinged, okay, you should think about it from the perspective of like not giving some of the biggest scumbags. I'm not talking about Ethan here. I'm talking about all of the other communities that will eat good off of even this amount of coverage. Okay? They will comb through this entire chat and comb through what I said to find any moment that they can to frame completely out of context and to make really false, hurtful accusations that they know are false, but they don't care, in an effort to launch an endless sequence of attacks and continue the drama. Meanwhile, people that I know, that I talk to, are still at death's doorstep. Okay? Israel is moving into the West Bank. They're harassing journalists. They're doing whatever they want. And America is giving unlimited funds and unlimited weapons to Israel to do so. And that dynamic is never going to change. And all you've done in that circumstance is basically deflate one vector of criticism against that by leaning in to your unhinged and oftentimes narcissistic desires. And you have given an opportunity to some of the biggest scumbags. Okay? Yeah. One of Bonicelli's biggest orbiters is literally doing that right now. They have pages of screenshots from the Discord and they're half an hour behind you watching the VOD. They're pathetic and don't deserve the oxygen. There you go. While Janine was leveled, that's what these guys care about. You know why? Because they can't defend Israel. That's it. And you are giving them a wonderful opportunity. I didn't know what this video looked like. And I didn't know how chat was going to react. So thank you. Thank you. I can't wait for the Keemstar and the Destiny videos and all the endless tweets from Fear Buck and all these other clippers who have never spent a single moment thinking about the inhumanity and to farm revenue off of your unhinged desire to show how pro-Palestine you are. Thank you. You did it. Anyway, good night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Love you all. Free Palestine.